How's it going? Welcome to Gamer by Mistake NinTrendo Podcast, where I'll be covering trending Nintendo-related content from the past week. On this episode, I'll be discussing Nintendo Switch 2 game prices, the release of Pokémon Champions, No Man's Sky surprising update, and closing with next week's release of video games. Sit back, relax, and let's go over these topics together. Nintendo Switch 2 game prices are already dropping, and I think I have proof. If you are a Nintendo fan, you've probably noticed how much prices have gone up with the Switch 2. And honestly, the most surprising part isn't even the console itself. When you stop to think about it, we basically have a portable PS4 in our hands. And that's kind of insane. But the game prices are where things get harder to justify. Nintendo published games are now launching at prices that feel entirely different from what we are used to in the Switch 1 era. I've paid full price for games like Cyberpunk 2077 at launch. Even though it originally released in 2020, it's a massive AAA experience with tons of content, including the Phantom Liberty DLC, and it's easily one of the best games of the decade. I'm also looking forward to playing Elden Ring on a handheld. That's the kind of experience where paying $70 feels acceptable, if that's the price. But considering the scale and depth of the game, that's what I'm expecting. However, Nintendo games are a different story. Mario Kart World caused a massive uproar when its price was finally revealed. It sat at an absurd €89.99 and $79.99 for the physical edition. And back then, I had to choose the bundled version because there was no way I would be spending that much money on a video game. But are people actually paying these prices? This is what I asked myself the other day when I went to the only electronics store in my hometown and came across something interesting. I saw Mario Kart World sitting on the shelf for €62. That immediately caught my attention because on the official Nintendo store, the same game is listed at $89.99. Still, in a state of complete disbelief, I asked the employee if this was some kind of temporary discount, and it wasn't. He told me that, at least in that store, this was simply the price they were selling it going forward. And it wasn't just Mario Kart World. I glanced at the rest of the games on the shelf and saw major Nintendo titles heavily discounted, from Donkey Kong Bonanza all the way to Kirby Air Riders. Since Vorten, the store I went to, is one of the biggest electronic retailers from my country, I decided to check their online store and compare their prices with its direct competitor. And what I found was interesting. You can find the entire breakdown in the description, but the main takeaway is that despite some price variations between stores, one thing is clear. Most of these games are already selling for 15 to 20 euros less than Nintendo's official pricing. This translates to a roughly 20% discount. What makes this particularly interesting is that this isn't happening years after the release of these games. It's happening in just a few months after. This becomes even more intriguing when you start comparing the situation with older Nintendo Switch titles. For example, I found The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild at one store for $52.99, which is $7 down from its original $60. That's only about an 11% discount even after nearly 9 years on the market. So now we have a strange situation where older games see small price drops over time, while newer games are discounted heavily just a few months after. And in my opinion, it means Nintendo has set the bar too high when it comes to prices. Prices in the €80 to €90 range for standard games don't seem to align with what consumers are actually willing to pay, and retailers are adjusting quickly to reflect that. And at the end of the day, consumers speak with their wallets. If prices are already dropping this much, this early, it implies that people simply aren't buying these games at full price. Even during the Switch 1 era, I rarely paid the full $60 for a game, since pre-order discounts of around 10 to 15% were and are still common. Now, constantly being asked to pay more than $65 with a pre-order discount for each Nintendo release still feels new and honestly a bit excessive. Usually consumers adapt to higher prices over time, but this time we might be seeing the opposite. Instead of accepting the €80 to €90 as the new normal, the market seems to be pushing back. My advice for this generation is just to wait a while for a price drop if this is a pattern that continues to happen. And that's the only reason why I'm still holding back on Pokopia. And while we're on the topic of Pokemon, let's go over the game that is known for having one of the best comebacks in gaming history, No Man's Sky, and its recent update that should hit the Switch soon. On the exact day of the Pokémon Champions release, No Man's Sky announced Update 6.3, which overhauls the companion system and adds Pokémon-like battles. I was immediately sold on a concept and quickly installed the game on my Switch too, only to realize the update was not available yet. It was for every other platform though, and it kinda sucks, these kind of updates always arrive late on my favorite console. But I was determined to play this update and remember that I actually own a Steam Deck and No Man's Sky features cross saves. So I went online 2 days after the update, found the cheapest key I could find, and after about 30 minutes of waiting for the game to install, I was ready to continue my journey right where I left off on my Nintendo Switch 2. Soon after, I traveled to the Anomaly and had my first taste of the Xeno Arena. And after receiving a severe beatdown, I was given directions to my first set of opponents in the nearby system. I was tasked with beating 3 competitors before being invited for a match with the resigning champion. This was a bit tougher than I had anticipated, since the creatures I had were super weak, so I had to go on a journey to just find stronger companions. But even so, I was getting utterly wrecked by the champion. Their creatures seemed unstoppable with heals for days and attacks that dealt massive damage. It also didn't help that I had a massive type disadvantage against most of their team. I didn't felt like traveling to other planets and capture brand new creatures. I was adamant of besting this champion with the creatures I already own. After each failed attempt, they leveled up a bit, allowing me to mess around with their genes to make them stronger. Turns out I was neglecting their health stat, and after a few upgrades I was finally able to beat my first champion. Afterwards I kept doing this quest line and ended up beating another set of challengers, leading to a new system champion, which was much easier than the previous one. So far I still haven't reached the end of this quest line, and I hope it doesn't get too repetitive. As for the battles, they are fun, especially for someone that enjoys Pokemon battles. While they are turn-based, the way the abilities and attacks work are completely different from what I'm used to in a Pokemon game. From my experience, the defensive options are super strong. I had a companion that I was sure could one-shot everything, only to be humbled by my opponent's shields, hazards, and continuing healing. While there are battles where you can blitz through with damage alone, I haven't encountered this when facing the champions. This is all based on my first impressions, and I know there's more to see and discover with this update, since I haven't even touched the breeding system. All I hope now is that this update gets released on Switch soon. But if you can't wait like me, just be mindful that there is a possibility you won't be able to play your save file on Switch anymore if you enable cross-save and play it on another platform. You'll have to wait for the Switch version of No Man's Sky to sync with the platform you're playing, and that might take some time. And if Pokemon battles is what you want, then why not try Pokemon Champions? But should you? This week, I had the chance to review Pokémon Champions, and I was received with a ton of backlash, but I still stand by what I said. Pokémon Champions is not what competitive players need, or even Pokémon players in general. As someone who loves delving into the online battles after completing the main story of each Pokémon game, it turned out to be disappointing in many ways. I had concerns it was going to be a pay-to-win title, and after playing it and experiencing it for myself, I can definitely say that there are pay-to-win mechanics. But before diving into all of this, I like to focus on what's good, and there is some of it in Pokemon Champions. For example, battling is fun, especially since there are a limited number of Pokemon and items which allows for strategies and team comps that we might not see otherwise. The way you obtain Pokemon through the ranch is also a fun way to build a team. You'll never know what you'll get, and it's super rewarding when you find that missing piece that glues the whole team together. As of recording this, I've yet to transfer my Pokemon from home since I'm having far too much fun climbing the ranks this way, and so far I have reached Ultra Ball in doubles. Unfortunately, this is where the fun stops. I'm trying to see how far I can go as a free-to-play player, and from my experience, I think I can reach the higher ranks, but maintaining that position will be difficult for a simple reason: the way you earn VP. VP is the currency you need to train your Pokemon, recruit them, and purchase battle items. This means you'll need a lot of them, and early on this will not be an issue since the game will shower you with VP as reward for completing certain achievements, but they will eventually slow down and you'll reach a point where you'll need to rely on battle wins. And good luck with this because you only get 300 VP for each win and 100 for each loss. Competitive players are constantly trying out new teams or making adjustments to EVs and moves after a match. Changing a move costs 250, the ability 500, and EVs are usually 5 VPs per point allocation. Doing this in Champions is not sustainable. You need to use Pokemon Home. Doing so, you can train your Pokemon in other mainline games and transfer them to Champions. They will retain their EV spreads and moves if available in-game, and this is when you clearly see that players who have dedicated more time and money to other games have an unfair advantage. Even before the game release, players already had teams of perfectly trained Pokemon ready for ranked battle, while you are stuck with the ranch gacha hoping to build a decent team. You will struggle further since you cannot train a Pokemon you've obtained from the ranch if you don't permanently recruit them with VP or tickets. Then there's Mega Fluet. One of the strongest Pokemon in a format is not obtainable in the pool of Pokemon from the ranch. Instead, you'll need to own Pokemon Legends EA and transfer these Pokemon from there. You might argue that there are other great teams you can build without Mega Fluet, but it doesn't excuse the fact that your opponent has access to something you cannot obtain otherwise, giving them an unfair advantage. And unfortunately, my problems with this game don't end here. In the past, Game Freak introduced rental teams. One of the best mechanics for beginners in my opinion. With rentals, players could build a team and share it online with a code, and then other players would be able to rent their team and use them in online battles. The most difficult part of competitive Pokemon is the team building process, and it can be overwhelming for beginners if they keep spending hours building something that will get them nowhere. Rentals allow them to try good meta teams and start learning the game by experiencing firsthand what makes a good team. Now, why would they remove such a good system and replace it with replica teams? In Champions, you can also share a code with your team, but other players will not be able to use it. Instead, they will be provided the opportunity to train the Pokemon they own in the same way, and it will cost you a ton of VP, showing yet again why you will suffer as a free-to-play player. And then there's the Battle Pass and the membership. Because having a Battle Pass wasn't enough, they had to include a membership in this game as well. Battle Pass is probably the least of my concerns though, but it still gives a slight edge since it will reward you with Mega Stones that you don't need to spend VP to purchase otherwise, as well as corresponding Pokemon and even tickets that can be spent instead of VP to train and recruit team members. The membership though, you will need it unless you use Home, mainly for the 1000 box spaces. The game limits you to 30 box spaces and you need to rise the ranks to unlock them all. This number is strangling for newer players that are starting to build a roster of competitive Pokemon. If you decide to pay for the membership alone, it will cost you $49.99 a year or $4.99 a month. Sum the $4.99 that the Battle Pass costs, and this game will cost you far more than any Pokemon mainline game. If you can see this as greedy and a pay-to-win mess, then I don't know what to tell you. But I would be okay with all of this, maybe if the game ran perfectly. It's 2026 and we have a Nintendo Switch 2 where Pokémon Scarlet and Violet and Pokémon Legends EA run at a constant 60 FPS. Then why does Pokémon Champions struggle to maintain 30? I hate to be that person who complains about this kind of stuff, but it's so apparent that I cannot stay quiet about it. I truly hope we get a Switch 2 version in the future that will let this game run as its counterparts do. But now it begs the question, who is Pokémon Champions actually for? The game is for players that are already deep in the Pokémon home ecosystem and to milk the money of newer players and force them to purchase their membership plan. Pokémon Champions had the potential to be the definitive competitive Pokémon experience. Instead, it's a reminder that the Pokémon company knows exactly how passionate its fanbase is and isn't afraid to take advantage of that. As for myself, I will keep having fun as a free-to-play player. And once I reach the highest rank tier, I think I will start utilizing my home Pokemon because there is no way I'll be able to sustain myself with how costly building a team in Champions is. And this concludes my sour thoughts on Pokemon Champions in general. We're reaching the end of this episode and let me thank you for sticking with me. Now, as usual, let's go over next week's upcoming game releases. I've been looking forward to covering this week since there are 2 games coming out that I've been looking forward to and genuinely cannot decide on which I should be purchasing, and playing the demos didn't help my decision at all. First, releasing in April 14, we have Dosa Divas One Last Meal. Outer Loop Games delivers Dosa Divas, a spicy narrative turn-based RPG. After years apart, sister Samara and Amani journey with her Asian spirit mech on a mission to defeat a rotten fast food empire and reconnect communities with their traditions. At $19.99, this is one of the most accessible games dropping this week. And I beg you to see the trailer because it showcases how much mechs are an important part of this game. It's not every day that we get a mech-driven RPG, so if you are into that, I highly recommend you check out Dosa Divas. Next we have Tomodachi Life Living the Dream. Become the caretaker of an island full of silliness, drama, love, and other surprises. Absurd situations await as you populate your island with me characters based on yourself, family, friends, or original creations. This is one of the games releasing this week that I have wanted to buy ever since I played the demo on my Nintendo Switch. If you are into live sim games, the best I can say is try the demo as well. I know that everything in the game was for me, but I can understand not all people will enjoy or relate to its gameplay, humor, and quirkiness. If you want to know more about the demo, you can just click on my review on the description. It will definitely help you know if this game is for you or not. Moving on, we have Mouse PI for Hire, releasing also on April 16. This is one I think it's going to surprise people. Mouse PI for Hire is an action-packed first-person shooter that draws inspiration from the classic cartoons of the 1930s. Its black and white rubber hose visuals are drawn by hand, frame by frame, delivering a striking vintage aesthetic. For some reason, this game doesn't feel like it should exist. But after several of Disney's 1930 animations became part of public domain, it's fair game for everyone. Although I need to emphasize that Mouse PI is completely original and doesn't borrow any character from Disney. For a Switch 2 title, this is genuinely refreshing, and everything I've seen of this game so far looks like it's got personality to spare, especially since everything is hand-drawn. The game's been delayed a few times before, so it's great we finally see it ready for play in just a few days. Then, also on April 16, we have The Day I Became a Bird, and it's an indie title that might fly under the radar if I don't mention it. In his playable, illustrated story, follow Frank through a slice of his life, biking to school, running around the park, completing puzzles, making memories, and discovering newfound feelings for his classmate Sylvia. This is one of those games that I would pick up to relax at the end of a stressful day, and if you look at the trailer, you'll get what I'm saying. As soon as I hit play, the cozy vibes were off the roof. So if you're searching for a game to help you unwind, then this is the one for you this week. Finally, I'm closing with the highlight of the week. Pragmata, an original IP from Capcom. It is the near future and protagonist Hugh and his android companion Diana must work together as they make their way through the cold lunar research station where some hostile AI is going rogue. At first glance, it looks like any other sci-fi shooting game. But then I saw how Diana, the android who will accompany you, helps during fights. Your shooting is ineffective until you use Diana to hack your enemies and reveal their weak points. And after that, you'll have to play this minigame while you move, dodge, and shoot all at the same time. At this point, I knew I was going to buy it since I love experimenting with fresh gameplay mechanics, but I'm still unsure whether I should pick this one up or Tomodachi Life. If someone can help me with this decision, I'll be very thankful. And with this, we have concluded yet another episode of the NinTrendo Podcast. Thank you so much for sticking with me until the end, and if everything goes well, I'll be seeing you again next time with brand new content. Thanks for listening.